Hello everyone, how's it going? Max with BuzzTox here, and I am back with another reaction video of the Westworld trailer that dropped 3 weeks ago. So I'm a little behind, but I'm going to catch up and I'm going to start covering Westworld, so I'm very excited. But before I get into it, I first want to talk about Westworld, the show. The first season of Westworld is probably my favorite season of any show of all time, period. I feel like the show has progressively gotten worse, but it's still a good show. I feel like the first season focused on the maze, achieving the center of one's own consciousness. That was for the hosts. For season 2, it went through the door, the idea of combining human intelligence and biology with a host going through the door and becoming a host, or also being in a simulated reality, going through the door into a simulation. Whereas season 3 covered artificial intelligence. What if you had an artificial force like Rehoboam, who sees and understands everything and can calculate mathematically circumstances of what can happen based on all the data that comes into it. So there is a lot at play for season 4. I think there's a lot of moving chess pieces. For example, Delos, the company who owns Westworld, essentially has cracked the code of humanity. They have code of what makes a human, and they can put it on any person and dictate what decisions they will make. And if you combine that with Rehoboam and that artificial intelligence software, then potentially very dangerous things can happen. And we basically left off with Dolores wanting hope for humanity and for hosts, to build a better world for everyone who achieves free will. And season 4 really focused on Caleb, a human, breaking out of his chains. That was very reminiscent of the parks in Westworld, Shogun, things like that. But it will be interesting to see what happens this season. Each season seems to follow a technological idea, and it explores it fully. After season 3, Rehoboam basically entered into its doomsday scenario, where it predicted that humanity actually does not have that long until extinction. Chaos has been unleashed on the world because humanity has realized that they have been recorded, followed, understood, and their futures have been predicted. So it did end very similar to season 1, when Dolores broke her code, became conscious, and killed Ford, and chaos happened in Westworld. The same thing seems to be happening in season 3, where the truth came out, people understood the truth, there are riots in the street, and complete chaos. But with that being said, let's get into the trailer. So back at Westworld again.
Just a perfect day. Drink sangria in the park.
Caleb's having a coffee, everything looks normal.
And then later, when it gets dark, we go home.
Is that Dolores?
Just a perfect day.
The song,
Feed animals in the zoo.
it seems like everything's completely back to normal.
Just a perfect day. You made me forget myself. I thought I was someone else, someone good.
Who even knows if that's the real Man in Black? That's him in the Great Valley Beyond.
Oh, it's such a perfect day. I'm glad I spent it with
Like Westworld training there.
Oh, such a perfect day. You just keep
A lot of callbacks, man, to the first season.
You just keep me hanging on.
Mark. That's disgusting.
You're going to
Okay, that was weird, man. Like there's a lot going on and there's a lot to unpack.
You're going to reap just what
It seems like that building is really iconic in the advertising. Okay. I wonder how many people watch this trailer and actually feel like they know what's going on. To be honest, it's completely different than what I expected. God, where do we even begin? Let's go through the trailer one more time. Okay, so here's Maeve driving across what seems like the Westworld plains, but what's funny is that she's on a road. And in the background, it actually looks like there's potentially some buildings. Last we saw Maeve, she ended up partnering up with Caleb because now I believe he is the guy who is basically the designated leader for humans. He's like the human version of Dolores, where you can help them kind of see the light and find their consciousness and understand who they are. And really, the way I see it is, you know, in terms of breaking your human consciousness, they talk about this in the previous seasons of the show, is that humans, our basic fundamental code is survival and reproduction. And that's like the core of our drives. And that which is free can break their fundamental drives, or change their fundamental drives. But then we see Caleb, and he's having a coffee, and he looks very chill. And I find this really interesting because it's eerily similar to Westworld Season 1. Season 1, we follow Dolores. She ends up achieving consciousness. And then once she's conscious, she kills Ford. Stuff goes down. A bunch of people die. And then Season 2, we follow Bernard's experience. And then 2 weeks after that experience, we see the military come in. But during that time, like, Westworld was still open. Like, there were still other parks that were open. Which is funny because even in our own personal experience, we'll have these crazy events. Particularly the last couple of years have been insane. But people always just revert back to their normal. So this could be one of two things. Either the issue with our society is something comes out that we have a company that's spying on a bunch of people. And people go up in arms. There may be riots in the street. But at the end of the day, people are just going to fall back to their normal. And society is going to return to the same machine it always was. So that's the first option where, you know, this event took place. But then you realize that people don't really care, you know? The other side of it is there were glimpses in this trailer that I got that eerily looked like it was a park in itself. Unless they're trying to make a commentary on our society as a whole, that we have built this manufactured society that basically reproduces people who don't necessarily have a sense of self. They're just going through their day-to-day, and you can't really articulate what is you and what is imposed upon you because of the society that you belong to, right? And that's the fundamental of consciousness. If you can sit back and question where your beliefs come from, where your ideals come from, and be able to realize that maybe sometimes they're wrong. So either we're going to see that storyline, or we're going to have another storyline where this is also a park. And we're seeing maybe Charlotte Hale kind of come into power, and she's going to start taking over this city. And she basically turns it into her own playground. We see Ashley, you know, his primary objective now is to protect Bernard. But then Bernard went into the Valley Beyond because he has the key, and he's going to get some hidden answers from the hosts that went to the Valley Beyond. And then Ashley was gone. So I don't know where Stubbs has been. We're going to be seeing his journey and everyone's journey up until the point where Bernard wakes up with a bunch of dust on him, and where William is being fidelity tested by his daughter in the far, far future. I wouldn't be surprised if in this season in particular, the timeline jumps are going to be from this present to the future of the dust settling. When the new host or the new species of the Earth walks the planet. And there is William. I don't know if they confirmed that they killed his character. It looked like they did, and they have many, many copies of him. He's the one character where I haven't been too happy with his arc. We'll see where it goes in the future. But my theory on William is I think he's the one primary candidate to be a human transferred over to a host. But I don't think they're going that route. It seems like they're going the route of him being the full-blown villain, like what we saw in the Westworld movies. So we could argue that this William is really just a puppet of Charlotte Hale. And William is a very powerful man in this society. So there's a lot of things that Charlotte could use him for. And here's, you know, the beautiful city skyline. You know, if you listen to the music, it says, you know, such a perfect day, da-da-da-da-da. And if you look at it, like, it is. Like, they shot this to make it look like it is a perfectly clean, crisp world, not a stone out of place. Everything is calculated, which is funny because it's in a direct contrast to what we saw at the end of season 3, which, falls back to my two thoughts that either one, people protested and rioted and then they ended up falling back in line as a society, or two, there is something else going on here, and this could be another park. It could be a simulation that could be run from the cradle or the forge in Westworld Park itself. It could be a simulated mechanism to see humanity's development. It could also be a visual representation of what Rehoboam has seen as the death of civilization of humanity. So there's so many different possibilities. I'm really interested to see how they explore this. And here it is, Dolores is back. So there was a part of me that thought that she was actually dead, but how could she be? In the last season, Lawrence actually gave Bernard the encryption key. And, Lawrence, we know, has Dolores's brain module. She copied herself 5 times. So that could be a Dolores there. Dolores also could be within the Rehoboam system. Even though Caleb wanted to destroy everything, there still could be remnants of Dolores, and she's living in this simulated reality. If you look at the Great Valley Beyond, for example, Dolores fired off the simulation to different coordinates. So it's a world that exists in some random space. But then you'd have to explain the brown hair. Maybe she's going incognito. She needs to be secretive. I'm not 100% sure. But regardless, I don't know how much of Dolores is in this Dolores. I don't know what variant of Dolores this is. All I know is that if you look at Charlotte, she was a copy of Dolores. But from different experiences, from Charlotte seeing the human Charlotte Hale's family, having the family die, it completely turned Charlotte into the villain. So it's interesting, that she became essentially a bad Dolores. She became the Wyatt, the Judas steer that leads everyone to the slaughter. So we'll see what this Dolores wants, but she's basically going to be at war with herself. So here it seems like Maeve and Caleb are entering in a new aspect of the park. They're going to see a new facility. Maybe there's a new plot point that they're looking for. They need information. Maybe there's going to be another park that was designated for understanding humanity. The other places that they could go to that we do know of is the Forge and the Cradle. The Cradle is essentially a simulation of all the hosts, and the Forge is a simulation of understanding humans and the human condition. So this is Bernard in the Valley Beyond, I believe. If you look at that tree, I think that's a tree that Dolores always stands by. And I think that that's Dolores' horse there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bernard found her there. That might be a weird plot twist, that the Rehoboam simulation basically sent her to the Valley Beyond. But who knows? I find this interesting because this is like a species of host. It's the first time an intelligent species of life is able to evolve and grow without human interference. So I think we'll see what the showrunners do, but I think this could very well be their interpretation of what a utopia is. And I think this area, the Valley Beyond, the answers are really... I think a part of the answers that Bernard is really seeking is how do we effectively build a utopian society where everyone can thrive and everyone is free, and what does that look like? And no one seems to be here, so this is obviously really trying to contrast to the Westworld Park when they had the hosts pretending to dance, kind of testing their cognition to see if they were effective enough at being hosts. We see Charlotte here in the scene kind of watching them. It is a pretty weird scene. She's not going to round up a bunch of people and have them dance in the street. This is what makes me think she is in the Forge. She is in some type of simulation where she can basically develop her own plans to exactly her needs. Because I think one of the dangerous things that this Charlotte Hale knows is in season 2, Dolores went into the Forge and she ended up picking up a book, and the book basically gave the code to every human. So if you understood characteristics of each individual, you could dictate every decision that they would make. And if you combine that with a simulation and you know what people are in the world, then you can essentially project and make your own circumstances. So if I were to like make a guess, I would say that this could be some type of simulation or side park, but these are hosts based off people. Potentially. And then here we have her turning around to what I imagine is William, another person that she has replicated and made into her puppet. So this is the timeline jumps I was talking about. Like, this could very well be the far future after Bernard wakes up from his journey to the Valley Beyond, and he's going to be piecing together what the hell happened. It's once again going to be a time jump of this is what happened, this is the end result, Bernard's storyline, and then this is the Dolores, Maeve storyline, Caleb storyline, where we see the events happen. And this is exactly what we were talking about. You have Charlotte Hale with William. They have the table of the map just like Westworld. It is eerily similar. Everything seems absolutely perfect. So whatever it is, this world, whether it's real or not, is completely under Charlotte's control. Whether it's a simulation or she actually is tapped into the host condition and the human condition and has them being unintentionally controlled by her. And I think that's her mission, is she's going to safeguard consciousness. She stays in power because she sees that she's the only one who can effectively wield it. So essentially, you create a society where you have the humans still in a societal trap with technology, with Rehoboam, with things of that nature, still taking advantage of their fundamental constraints and keeping them in shackles. And it's the same thing with the hosts. I don't know why there's all these flies. So here's another world that they're going to be entering. It seems like maybe like the 40s, like classic mafia type, like New York type stuff. The only reason I can really think about the show continuing to revisit these parks at this point, if you're going back to a timeline like this, maybe either Maeve, Caleb, or someone else is going back to either find a host or to find a human. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they said that, you know, some hosts were based off humans and you can get some intellect from some people within these parks. It's embedded within these parks, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, see, there's a Tommy gun. There you go. It seems very reminiscent of The Heist, and they've repeated that in Shogun World and Westworld, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is a remake of that. So I believe that this is William killing Lawrence. Maybe he's hunting him down because Charlotte knows that Dolores' module is in there. So here there's a lot of flies. The only context I can give to that is the first episode of Westworld, the fly would always fly over the eyes of the hosts, and Dolores, in the last minute of the first episode, kills the fly, showing that she's starting to break her own core code that she can harm life. So it's pretty interesting with flies in this show, because typically flies come with decay, with death, right? Whereas in Westworld, it's almost the opposite. It represents birth. If you have a host that is achieving a semblance of consciousness, they always use the fly to represent that. So the symbol almost represents something completely opposite from a human perspective to a host perspective. And this is like the advertising. It's all the weird spider web type stuff, just like the building here. And if you look at this park, it's completely isolated. You have one long bridge that's going straight into the park. So you could argue this is a simulation. I wouldn't be surprised if they try and make the argument of things returning to normal, where Charlotte isolates this patch of city and ends up getting complete control. Because think about how many things come out in the news that people get bombarded with, and then we brush it off like it's nothing. We always return to our common state of how we operate in society. So we will see what happens. But that was a lot of thoughts on this trailer. Please let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I would love to hear all of your theories and opinions. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.